Becoming a dad was no easy task. I certainly wasn't prepared. I don't know how many of us ever are, right? The very first time I took out my first little girl, well, I'll get into that in just a minute. My name is Steve. SBK is a nickname that I've gained over the years from my friends. And this is about my life as a stay-at-home dad. I've been the primary caregiver of my 3 daughters for over 10 years now. And the adventure has really never stopped. Many laughs, many tears, many arguments, and a whole lot of joy and happiness. But just becoming a dad was really a challenge that I wasn't exactly ready for. Changing diapers, feeding, formula, sleep deprivation, crying, so much crying, always crying. And that certainly is not something that a young man in his youth probably thinks a whole lot about, which blows my kids' minds. Now, let me tell you about me becoming a dad, because just this story in and of itself is a little different and a little crazy. If you're not a parent yet, especially if you're watching this and you're a mom and you're pregnant with your first child, my story is not the traditional or the typical story. So my wife carried our first little girl to full term. And by to full term, I mean, we went 10 days over. So she just didn't want to come out. She was stubborn and she remained stubborn, but she didn't want to come out. So finally they scheduled her to come in to be induced. We had asked some friends about kind of the process and they're like, oh, it's not great, but it's not, but it's not that bad. You go in the night before, they'll give you some medication, and the next morning you'll have your baby, and that is not how it went for us, not even a little bit. So we went in on a Tuesday night. Anyway, we went in at night. She got the medication given to her, and right away it put her into labor, and it was bad. My wife doesn't do pregnancy well. She doesn't really enjoy it. I'm not saying that as an insult to her. She handles it very, very well, but she's kind of short. There's not a whole lot of room for the baby to go, so it's just not pleasant for her to be pregnant. So we go in there, the labor starts, it's pretty bad, the pains are pretty bad, but she's not far enough along for them to give her any medications or any epidurals. So we're kind of suffering through the night. So the first handful of hours, 6 or 8 hours, were really pretty miserable for her. Obviously, I was there holding her hand and doing everything I could, but emotionally, I was definitely struggling a little bit. She ended up being, we'll give you the quick version, she ended up being in labor for 40 hours. Like every new doctor that would come in would say she's not quite as far along as the doctor before that would come in. And so for 40 hours she was in labor, and that included basically a grand mal seizure. That I handled pretty well. The nurse that was there did not. She did a good enough job, but labor and delivery nurses aren't exactly seeing seizures every day, and I was a paramedic and I happen to see seizures all the time. So we handled it together real well. It was in the middle of the night, so the staff that was there was very low. But 40 hours worth of craziness, that is how my first daughter's life started. My wife and I got slammed into parenthood, and we were tired right away. Obviously, my wife was substantially more tired than I was, but neither one of us slept for that 40 hours. She did end up getting some medication, and that really helped the second half of the labor. But after 40 hours, there was a C-section, right? So she ended up having a C-section, which we were both a little bit disappointed about for the first kid, but you know what? The kid needs to come out. At that point, she was about 12 days late, and it was time. And so she came out. That was great. And kind of in the middle of the afternoon, the hospital that she was born at plays, when they wheel you into the next room, they play the little music, and that was kind of cool. We're both super tired and super worn out. And here comes my brand new little baby girl. Our kids were pretty big, 9 and 10 pounds, or just under 9 and just over 9. I don't think anyone was a full 10. So she didn't eat. My first daughter was a day old. 24 hours had gone by. If you are a parent, you know this is a problem. If you're not a parent, this may be a problem. She came out and she didn't latch. She didn't eat from mom. She just wasn't eating. So after about 24 hours went by, us and the staff started getting somewhat concerned because they need to start gaining their weight back. That's what helps the health of the baby and helps them get going. Well, she was a C-section baby, so they explained to us that she may need to have the contents of her stomach removed. So they take our kid that's a day old. I got to go with her, and by God, I mean, obviously I wouldn't have it any other way. But parents don't ever leave children, not anymore. I think that when I was born, the kid just lived in the nursery. Now there's always a parent with the child at all times, which is a good thing. So they take us to the NICU. My wife stayed in bed and was relaxing. I go with my daughter, now 24 hours old. And the NICU, this is the good part, was I learned how to swaddle a baby. I can swaddle a baby, man. The NICU nurses know what they're doing. And she swaddles this kid down. There was literally no movement, not in the head, not in anything at all. And they put this teeny little straw down her nose, into her stomach. So I'm watching my poor little one-day-old baby. This is how I was slammed into parenthood. Get lavaged. It's called getting lavaged. They put some saline solution in there, suck it all out. Hopefully that will make her not feel full and help her eat a little bit. But she didn't. So more time went on, another like 8 hours, until finally my wife and I were kind of fed up. Now they're real popular or real focused on like natural feeding and nursing, and that's great. We're all for it. The second two did a great job at it, but this kid just wasn't easy, and they make you feel a little bit bad about using formula. Finally, after about the 18 or 20 hour, or not 18 or 20 hours, another 18 or 20 hours, so the kid hadn't eaten for about a day and a half, I went out there and just demanded formula. I said, I know that you have formula. I need some formula. She hasn't eaten. So the nurses reluctantly gave it to me. I had to figure out how to use it on my own. Finally fed her. She ate, as a almost 2-day-old baby, she ate like 8 ounces of formula all at once. The doctor couldn't believe it. So that was how we got slammed into parenting. That was how I became a dad. We were in the hospital for a total of 6 days. Yes, you heard that right. 6 days we were living in the hospital for our first child. And on day 6, they were going to send us home. Now, they don't let you carry your baby around. At least you're not supposed to like walk around with them, holding them in your arms in the hospital for safety purposes and whatnot. So they wheel you out to your car, and now you're supposed to take this kid home. Now, our experience had been poor, not the poor meaning like it had been really difficult, and you're constantly kind of scared. Well, is something going to happen to my kid? They're not eating, and it can be a little intimidating. Even though I had experience in the medical field, that helped. It certainly did help a lot. It was a little bit intimidating. So that was how we gained entry into parenthood, and my little baby. The doctor, incidentally, that came by the next morning to discharge us said, "Oh, I'm super glad that you demanded she eat formula, because if she didn't eat when you fed her, we'd be sending you to the NICU for a couple weeks right now." So I'm glad that I did that. Make sure you advocate. If you're a parent, if you're a father or mother, advocate. Have knowledge, but advocate for your family and for your child. So then we went home, right? We drove home. We drove through like a Carl's Jr. or McDonald's on the way. I was super scared to drive home. We had this teeny little Nissan, and for some reason I was just nervous. My kid was like almost 3 days old at this point, but I'm a brand new dad. I don't really know what I'm going to do at home, because for the past 3 days I've had a nurse there to answer questions, and a doctor really to answer questions and to help out. And now I'm like all on my own when she does weird stuff. And that can be a little bit intimidating. So we drove through because we were both starving, and I was super nervous to go through a drive-through. Despite the fact that I have had, at this point, when she was born, I'd had about 10 to 12 years of ambulance experience. I've been driving people around in critical conditions for years and years and years. It's a little different when it's your own kid, right? And when it's your own family. So we get her home, and she just didn't sleep. Now, there was a whole lot else that was going on, and I love my baby girl, my oldest, But she just didn't sleep. She wouldn't, I call it baby position. Look, we're going to use Charlie Brown here. She didn't do this. She always had to be bounced literally and spun around. Her uncles laugh about it now because she wouldn't just sit. So she wouldn't sleep. We'd put her down in her crib and she would scream and scream and scream for hours. She was not colicky. She just didn't want to sleep. She just didn't want to be in bed. So my wife and I, for the first couple of months of her life, switched off. I was used to staying up late because I was working on an ambulance at the time. And so I would stay up with her and hold her, and she'd sleep in my arms. If I put her up, she'd fall asleep, and then I could lay her down in my arms. But as soon as you laid her down in her crib, up, screaming. So we just decided this kid's got to sleep. So I would stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning. At about 1 or 2 in the morning, my wife would wake up and take back over for me so I could go get a couple of hours of sleep. And my wife's a teacher, so she had the summer off. My daughter was born just before summer. So this is our first couple of months of parenthood. Neither one of us really got any time together, like no parents really do. We got slammed into parenthood by that story I just told you, 6 days in the labor and delivery, and then a kid that wouldn't sleep. So we go to one of the first appointments, and I've started reading books by this point, all the parenting books. I read a couple before she was born. I read a couple now because I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to try to do my best to be a good dad. So I'm reading all these books, and we go to the doctors, and we tell the doctor, like, we're at like 3 months now, 3 or 4 months in, and she doesn't really nap. She takes these little cat naps all throughout the day, and all the books say, oh, sleep when your kid sleeps. What they don't tell you is what to do when your kid doesn't sleep. So we get to the doctors, and the doctor, I loved their doctor, and she goes, yeah, well, you just might have gotten one that doesn't sleep. Well, like, what? The books don't say that. The books don't say you can just get a baby that doesn't sleep. So that was our first child, and that's true. She still does. She just doesn't need, she's 13 now. She just doesn't need as much sleep as most people do. All throughout her childhood, she just didn't really sleep. She didn't nap all that well. And so we struggled. So what ended up happening was after the first about month or so, I ended up going back to work, or I was supposed to go back to work. The day that I went back to work, I was on paternity leave for a while. I got laid off. So the company basically sold the building that I was working out of. A lot of the employees got farmed out. I didn't. So I got laid off, came home for the summer. My wife and I spent the summer taking care of the kid. And it was time for my wife to go back to work because, again, she's a teacher. And so August rolls around and it's time for her to go back to work. And so we had some kind of decisions to make. I still was out of work. I was kind of looking, but we needed somebody to take care of the kid. Now, my wife and I made basically a commitment to each other long before we had children in our dating days when we were really getting serious, that we would always, to the best of our ability, have one of us home with the child. Or with our children. We always wanted more than one. And we just committed to our family to have, no matter what it took financially, to figure out a way to have a parent home with the child. And that was us. That was how we did it. And we decided that was important to us. So I became a stay-at-home dad. She went back to work. She was vested in her job at this time. She has tenure, essentially. And she was getting paid decently enough, and I didn't have a job, so I stayed home with our daughter for the first year and really became a stay-at-home dad. And that first trip out of the house, like without my wife or whatever, just all by myself, that came along. And let me tell you about that, folks, because again, I was not prepared. I didn't babysit, when I was a teenager, like a lot of you moms did. You guys spent a lot of time around kids while us boys were jumping on things in the backyard, getting dirty. And so I didn't have a whole lot of experience changing diapers. I do now. And taking care of all these things. So my first trip out of the house, our daughter was about 3 to 4 months old. My wife was back to work. And so I put her, luckily, we don't believe in luck. We had like an SUV. I think it was a Ford Explorer. And the reason I say that, it's gonna come up here in just a minute. So I'd get her all dressed. She's in the footy pajamas. So cute, right? 3.5 months old. I get in and think, I'm going to make a run to Costco. I'm going to go first thing in the, back then it wasn't as crazy. This is 15, 13 years ago. It wasn't as crazy as it is now. So I'm going to make a run to Costco, get a couple of things because I'm going to have to learn how to leave the house with this kid by myself. We had a bag packed for her and everything, you know, the diaper bag. And we didn't leave the house a whole lot in the first couple of months because you're not supposed to until they start getting their immunization built up. So I get her all packaged up. She's looking all super cute. I put her in the crate. I call it a crate because that's what it's like, the car seat, whatever, the crate, you know, you carry it around. I put her in the crate, get her in the car. We head, and for me, Costco is about 7 to 8 miles away. So you jump on the freeway. It takes 10, 15 minutes to get there. 10, 15 minutes goes by. I pull into the parking lot, which is pretty empty, thankfully, and I start smelling something that doesn't smell very good. And I'm thinking, oh no, this could be a problem because it just didn't feel right. So what I did was I ended up pulling all the way into the back of the Costco. There was nobody there in the very back of the parking lot because I was like, I'm going to have to figure this out, and I don't want people staring at me and because I don't know what I'm doing here. And so I pull all the way into the back, and I said I had an SUV, and so we had the back of the SUV set up to where we could use it as like a changing station. Thank goodness. She had filled up her little onesie footy pajamas, and by filled up I mean it was coming out the arms, and like she was completely full. And it was crazy. I like, what the heck happened here, child? And I was lost. I'm not gonna lie. I've been in a lot of funny situations in my life because of the jobs that I've had, and I don't know that anything prepared me for how to handle a child covered in their own bathroom material, all held with inside like the little onesie pajamas. So in the back of the Costco, I laid her down, and we had towels and stuff down there because I am an Eagle Scout and I am a Marine and I am a paramedic. So I was prepared to an extent. Laid her down, got that off. I gave her like this crazy bath, and I think I used an entire like case full of wipies. Used the entire case full of wipies. Got her all cleaned up, dried off, put her, she didn't really care. Luckily, she wasn't screaming this whole time. Got her changed, put another set of clothes on her, and immediately went home. That was it. Like, I didn't even go to Costco. I didn't stop or say, like, I just turned right back around and said, nope, this is too much for me. That was the first time I left the house alone with my child. That was my experience. I knew I was a little bit in over my head, but I had at least a little bit of a plan. Now, like I mentioned before, I have had a bunch of life experiences that has given me some preparation. One thing I've never had to worry about per se is how I would react in an emergency, because I've been in a lot of emergencies and I've been to a lot of emergencies, and I have been trained how to behave and keep my bearing, and that's super helpful. Not that this is a plug for this, but most community colleges offer EMT school. Why not? Why not go to EMT school? It'll take you a month or two, and at least you'll have a little bit more information on how to handle some of these emergencies that come along. But thankfully, because of my past as a scout, be prepared. Have a handful of things in your car. As a Marine, make sure you have bags packed and things. And 2 is 1, 1 is none, right? You have 2 of everything because you might run out, especially when it comes to kids. If you're dad, and if you're a new dad, I hope you're jotting a few notes down, even though this particular video isn't aimed at that. Have more than one thing. Have more than one diaper bag. I used a backpack. My wife was super into this. I convinced her, instead of getting the fancy pink Coach diaper bag, which we had for a month or two, we need this. And I still have it and use it for other things. It was a backpack. It worked great. It had compartments, lots of rooms for things, and it functioned very well. You can carry it when you're carrying 30,000 other things, because little teeny babies take a lot of stuff. And so I became a stay-at-home dad. That's what I did for the first year of my life. I became a stay-at-home dad, or for the first, not year of my life, for the first year of our first daughter's life, I was the primary caregiver of her. It was my responsibility because she never did latch properly. So she didn't eat breast milk, but I had to feed it to her because she just wasn't into it, man. She was difficult in that particular area. So I woke up in the middle of the night to handle that so my wife could be as ready and prepared to go to work as she possibly could be. Now, I did end up getting hired by an ambulance company out here where I live as a paramedic running 911 calls. Had a good time doing that for a few years. But after a few years and a few more babies, we had a couple of babies, and babies are expensive. Childcare is really expensive, and we had made a commitment that one of us would always be home. Again, the short version of this story is we had a conversation, and as at the time, as a first in ambulance paramedic in where I live, if you're not a firefighter, the firefighters do really well, but the single function paramedics don't get paid very much, especially not at the beginning of their career. So it didn't make sense for me to continue in that line of work because quite literally, my wife teaches math. According to the math, my entire paycheck would be going to childcare, and then that would be if I was working 48, 72 hours in a row, and I'd never get to see my family. So we made the decision, and my wife loves her job. She wasn't super interested in staying at home, and I say that with the utmost love and respect. She would be a great stay-at-home mom. That's not how life went for us. And she likes her job. She likes teaching and influencing kids in that way. And she had quite a few years on already. So she's home at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. We get nights, weekends, and holidays off. And that is not the life of a paramedic. So we decided that I would come back home. I would come back home where I was supposed to be. I always had a second job, especially for the first 10 or 15 years. I was a lifeguard here in town for quite a while, and my wife would come home from work again at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I would go to work and do something. I've worked at Universal Studios, Hollywood, in the health services department, and I was a lifeguard for a manager there for quite a few times. So most of the time I had a second job to help make ends meet and stuff, but my primary job was as a dad, and I learned a whole lot along the way. For years, and this is for you dads at home, or for you moms, by the way, that might be, I know that the society that we live in right now, let's just say that they don't always look fondly on parents that choose to stay home. And as a stay-at-home parent, sometimes you can look down on yourself. You can have a hard time believing that you're valuable. And for the first couple of years, as a stay-at-home dad, for the first couple of years, people would ask what I did, especially as the guy, as the man. And I would say, I stay home and take care of my daughter, but I'm a paramedic, because that's true. That will be true for about another 3 months, and I'm going to finally let my license go because I'll never use it again. And it's expensive to keep up. But I would quickly add, but I'm a paramedic and blah, blah, blah. And you know what? I no longer do that. For some reason, it made me feel better. But after a couple of years, it just settled in that this is who I am and this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be a dad. I do an okay job at that. Time will tell, right? 30 years from now, check back with the channel, see how we're doing. But I really enjoyed it. I don't always feel like I know what I'm doing, because most of the time, I still am waiting to when does the dad feeling kick in? It's kind of weird that I have not only my own children, but they're like teenagers. My wife's totally used to it. She thinks it's normal. I'm like, yeah, that's just weird that I'm the guy that's in charge around here. But that's who I am, and that's what I do. I'm a stay-at-home dad. It's definitely been the hardest and most rewarding job I've ever had. And like you've already heard, I've had some doozies. But this for sure has been the most difficult, and I don't say hardest for any particular reason other than there's a whole lot of angles to being a stay-at-home parent. You never get to go home. There is no calling out sick. Your job is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never ends. And that's a good thing. I enjoy it. And there's lots of different aspects and things you have to learn to do. So I'm curious who you are. If you've hung out with me this long in this video, a little bit of a dad diary here, how I got my start as a dad. And that was 13 years ago. In that period of time, I have learned a lot. I've learned a lot of how to take kids, how to take a whole bunch of little girls potty, right? When they start to get to the age where they can potty on their own, but you're like in the mall by yourself. There are tips, tricks, and hacks that I have that will go through along the way, and things that I've learned. I'm curious on who you are and what you've learned, what your life is like. Let me know down in the comments. And if you want to come along for the ride, if you like the videos that you've seen already, or if you've enjoyed this video, go check my other videos out. At the time of this filming, this channel is just getting started. I'm having a good time trying to ramp up and build an audience here and try to share some of what I've learned as a dad, or as a stay-at-home parent with you all, and learn from you guys as you comment, because I'm getting into the teenage years and that's sure to be a little crazy. But we have a lot of fun. We go on a lot of adventures, and being a girl dad is different. Now, lucky for me, I'm not the most manly of guys. So I was never into sports or anything like that. And that works out really good because I had a bunch of daughters. I wouldn't know what to teach a son when it came to baseball or softball or basketball or whatever the case may be. But if you're interested, I really encourage you to go check out go check out some of my other videos. Hit that thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow, and we're really trying to grow it here. And even consider subscribing. And I really appreciate you guys. Hope to see you on the next one.